Hi, and welcome to Chapter 30, Learning Objective 7. And so here it's very short, but we're going to talk a little bit about the Fisher effect, and I have a video to follow that talks a little bit more in depth about the Fisher effect. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you. Okay, so the Fisher effect basically holds with the classical dichotomy that inflation does not affect real variables. We look at it specifically when we talk about interest rates now. Okay, so we're talking about interest, and remember we use small letter I for interest. Okay, so money neutrality basically says that when the money supply increases, we're going to see an increase in inflation. Now, how does that affect the interest rate? Basically, the real interest rate does not change, but the nominal rate does. Remember, the nominal is equal to, so interest rate of nominal is equal to the real rate of interest plus inflation. Okay, so what happens is as the money supply increases, it increases the nominal rate through the inflation rate. So the inflation rate goes up, the nominal rate will go up, the real rate will remain unchanged. So again, money neutrality says that inflation does not affect any real variable, and this is true for inflation for interest. Okay. So again, there's a one-for-one adjustment. So if we increase the money supply by 5%, then essentially, if we believe in the Fisher effect and the classical dichotomy, velocity is relatively constant, then essentially what we have is the nominal interest rate will go up 5%. The real rate of interest will remain unchanged. So essentially everything is absorbed in the inflation rate, which is part of that nominal rate, and that would be going up 5%. Okay? All right, so here is just a look at it so you can kind of see that the nominal interest rate increases as inflation increases. So when we talk about the interest rate over here, interest rate per year, so here's our nominal interest rate. What's essentially pulling up the nominal interest rate is not the real rate, right? Because that remains unchanged, but it is the inflation rate. Okay, so now I have just a short video about the Fisher effect, and that's the end of this learning objective. Thanks for your time and attention.
What is the Fisher effect? The Fisher effect describes the relationship between the inflation rate and the nominal interest rate. Suppose your grandma lends you $100 at an interest rate of 10%. That's right, this grandma has an interest rate. But suppose also that over the year, the inflation rate is 10%. So at the end of the year, you pay your grandma back $110. That looks pretty good on paper, but during that year, money has become less valuable. Due to inflation, what used to cost $100 now costs $110. So what's your grandma's real return? 0. More generally, we can write that the real interest rate is equal to the nominal rate, the rate charged on paper, minus the inflation rate. Inflation reduces the real return on a loan. So, if grandma expected the inflation rate to be 10%, then in order to get a real return of 5%, she must charge you a nominal interest rate of 15%. Now, you may think grandma's cold for charging you a 15% interest rate, but she isn't alone in this behavior. Everyone does it, and it's called the Fisher effect, named after the great American economist Irving Fisher. The Fisher effect observes that nominal interest rates will rise with expected inflation rates. We can see the Fisher effect in this data from the United States. Notice, for example, how interest rates and inflation rates were low in the 1960s, But as inflation increased, so did interest rates. Interest rates reached a peak of almost 20% when inflation hit 15% per year. Since that time, inflation has fallen, and so have interest rates. So to recap, the Fisher effect describes how interest rates and expected inflation rates move in tandem. To learn more about what causes inflation, click here. Or to test your knowledge on the Fisher effect, click here. Still here? Check out Marginal Revolution University's other popular videos.